welcome back to the Land of Lincoln Credit Union podcast, Bank on Learning More. We hope you enjoyed our season 2 premiere that we kicked off. We are heading right into episode 2. Just to give you a little highlight, we will have 6 episodes for this season, and they'll come out just about every other week.
Yeah.
And they're going to butt up just before Christmas, and we're full of some good tips for you with both from shopping and regifting. Little preview there. We're going to talk about that. But please be sure to keep an eye and set up your notifications so that you know when we drop a new episode. But today, first, my name is Kayla Hittmeyer. I assume you already know that because you've been listening to every episode, but
as good listeners do.
I'm Kayla Hittmeyer, Chief Marketing Officer here at Land of Lincoln Credit Union. And I got my sidekick.
Hello, I'm Katie Saloga. I'm the marketing coordinator here.
So you've probably, if you don't live under a rock, and you're on social media, you've probably noticed an uptick, especially I think since COVID. It's really gone crazy since the pandemic shutdown and all that, in GoFundMe and different kind of crowdfunding type of fundraisers. So we've also noticed in the news with that uptick in those fundraiser type things, an uptick in scams, because there's always
people take advantage of that situation.
They sure do. There's always those bad apples out there who want to try to take advantage, exactly like Katie said, of people's generosity and their kindness. And we basically found, when we did some digging for this, some real doozies out there of people who are seeking charitable donations, and really basically, let's just put it this way, what's the technical term? They're pigs. I think that's the technical term. So we're going to first dive into just sharing some GoFundMe scams, which they're kind of coining those, go scam me. And then we're going to wrap it up with the GoFundMe side of it with some tips on how to basically to identify when it's a scam or when it's legit, and things to look for, and ways to avoid getting taken advantage of. So, Katie, why don't you kick us off with a couple of doozy stories of the Go Scam Me.
So this was written by Michael Soul Warren of NJ Advanced Media for NJ.com. We'll give him his credit for finding this first. So this was in South Jersey. Last Thanksgiving, Burlington County couple Caitlin McClure and Mark D'Amico launched an online fundraiser for Johnny Bobbitt, a homeless veteran, after he gave his last $20 to McClure when she ran out of money at the gas station on I-95 in Philadelphia last year.
I remember seeing this in the news. Do you remember it? Because it was around Thanksgiving, and it was such a feel-good story because she ran out of gas and this guy's nearby.
He gave her the rest of his money.
And it was like, oh, how amazing. I did not know what transpired later. Carry on.
Well, let's see. Boosted by the holiday season, $400,000. Did I read that right? $400,000 in donations poured into the campaign, but Bobbitt now says he didn't get all of the money. The couple claimed they did not give the full amount to Bobby immediately because he struggled with drug addiction, and they feared he would blow it all irresponsibly.
Understandable, I suppose.
But also, not their call.
Right.
Now Bobbitt is suing McClure and D'Amico.
Yeah, I guess.
And GoFundMe has promised to make sure he is made whole. The stakes increased on Thursday morning when the couple's home in Florence Township was raided by police.
And it didn't happen this Thursday. We should note that this article was written last year. Actually, it's been a few years now that we look at it. I think it was 2018, yeah. But I do remember this coming out, and I remember thinking, holy cow. But this, to me, is something that everybody out there needs to be careful of, because there's a part of me that understands, they decided, he's so kind, let's put it out there. We have the means, we have the digital technology to raise some money for him. But they were afraid that he would just continue a bad pattern. But in the end, if you GoFundMe basically says, when they sign up for to have a crowdfunding like this, there's a policy that you have to sign that says it's going straight to the cause, and you have to prove it.
You can't withhold it.
So they basically are getting sued, and there's some fraud, there's some criminal charges, and I haven't followed up on it yet. I will. Maybe we can give a little update in the next episode, but I'm pretty sure, based off of what we see in the next ones coming up, that it is not going to turn out in their favor, because it doesn't look that way for several of them.
Yeah, you can't raise money for somebody and say, but we're not going to give it to you now.
Yeah, no. It's no good. Let's go on to the next one.
All right. A large amount of money. Woohoo! Adrian Gonzalez, who tracks GoFundMe campaigns on the watchdog website GoFraudMe, said that Bobbitt's situation in South Jersey is unprecedented in terms of how much money was involved. I have never seen anything close to this in 3 years I've been covering GoFundMe fraud, Gonzalez said. In the 3 years I've been covering GoFundMe fraud, Gonzalez said in an email. Over the years, there have been other noteworthy scams involving the use of GoFundMe. Here are a few examples.
All right. This first one really ticks me off.
Nevada mom fakes son's death, gets prison.
Should have it.
Yeah. Victoria Morrison of Carson City, Nevada, faked her son Blake's terminal illness and launched a GoFundMe campaign meant to raise money for the boy's bucket list.
Wow.
Morrison raised $2,000 in the campaign, which lasted over a month. Morrison was arrested in April 2017 and charged with obtaining money by false pretenses, according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Morrison pled guilty in May. She faces a minimum of 5 years and up to 12 and a half years in prison.
12 and a half years in prison.
What? Kid.
It's awful. Like, people like that, it just blows my mind. But it's funny because I've donated a few times to GoFundMe for different, like personal benefits, local people.
Right.
But what's interesting is once you do that, GoFundMe will actually start to send you some ongoing fundraisers that they think you might be interested in.
Ooh.
Like, did you see this GoFund? And it might be geographically in your area.
Yeah, and it's probably all automated.
It is. It serves up in my Facebook feed.
Yeah.
So they start to like go, hey, this might be one you're noted. Or if you opted in for emails, then they'll send you it via email and say, this might be one we thought you were interested in. To me, that just seems kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But there are times, when you look at something and you think, oh, how terrible, what a horrible plight, that they're going through.
Right.
And oh my goodness, but be careful of that. Let's give you another story. When Barry Sutton, a civil contractor and former police officer, was killed by a car bomb in Afghanistan, the town of Rome, Georgia, went into mourning. A GoFundMe campaign quickly popped up in Sutton's honor, organized by family friend Brandy Holder to raise money for a memorial duck hunt for the fallen officer's daughters. The hunt didn't happen.
Of course not.
Holder withdrew nearly $5,000 from the GoFundMe campaign, according to the Washington Post. Sutton's family only saw $400 before she stopped returning calls. Holder pled guilty to felony theft by conversion and was sentenced to 2 years in prison and another 8 months on probation in October of 2016. Why?
Well, and couldn't you could make up anything. You don't even have to be in contact with the people. Mm-mm. You could say, yep, I'm starting a fundraiser for you.
I'm glad you said that.
Tell them.
I'm glad you said that because coming up later, that's one of the tips that come up.
Goodness.
Yep.
Institution.
Jeez. I just don't. This next one, too, is about someone faking illness or death. Mm-hmm. And how do they sleep at night? That's what I just don't understand. In November 2014, a woman named Cynthia Smith of Burlington, Ontario, faked a rare neurological disorder to raise more than $126,000 in a fundraising campaign. According to the Hamilton Spectator, Smith convinced her loved ones that she had overcome organ failure and a massive stroke, both part of a rapid onset of chronic inflammatory some horrific disease. I guess it's real, polyneuropathy. But soon doubts were raised about Smith's supposed illness, and it was determined she was not ill. In May of 2015, Smith was charged with defrauding the public for more than $5,000. She pled guilty to a lesser charge of fraud under $5,000, which allowed her to go with 2 years of probation. Police were able to recover just $7,200 of the money Smith raised, according to the Burlington Post. I just don't get it. It's just insane.
I know, I'm running out of words just because
it's like, you get the idea. So what do you do then? We've shared these horror stories, and how do you protect yourself when you're just trying to be a good Samaritan and be helpful to someone who's hit some bumpy path in life, what can you do to make sure that specifically on GoFundMe, because that seems to be
it's the main site,
crowdfunding site of choice. What can we do? We're going to share some tips with you of things that you can do to keep yourself from donating to a GoScamMe instead of a GoFundMe.
Well, first thing would be to get outside confirmation before donating. One simple way to avoid a GoFundMe scam is to use an external source to verify the fundraiser's dollars are genuinely going to the victim. Navigate to Google or another search engine in a different tab and search for one or more of the parties involved. It's an easy way to verify that the claims at least are real. In one such case, an Alabama meteorologist whose yard got damaged by a recent tornado saw his name used to promote several fake fundraisers. He thanked people for their kind words and urged them to give money to homeless people instead, particularly since his abode remained intact.
Isn't that crazy? So you basically, like, all of a sudden start seeing your name tossed about for a GoFundMe campaign, and you have no idea about it. They just thought you were in the path of this tornado and threw your name in there. The guy was a meteorologist, so I think they thought he'd have a little notoriety.
Yeah, people would know who he is.
And they raised money for it, and they were just going to pocket it. It's insane.
Yeah, so you could Google search who the money's going to or the charity it's going to, and hopefully something will pop up.
Yeah, and I should say, too, that's a good thing to do with any type of solicitation.
Well, yeah.
So we have a lot of our members who come in and say, especially some of our elderly members, senior members who maybe aren't as savvy to the digital side of the world of fundraising and things like that. And they're a little bit more vulnerable because they don't have that experience. So they'll get a call or an email and it's asking for that. And they'll just, God love them, they believe it because they think you have honest intentions. Yes. So a good rule of thumb there is this one as well, is to, number one, call. If the business is emailing you, call that business and ask if they sent this out. We even get that with some of our stuff. People will say it's Land of Lincoln Credit Union, and then we get calls and we're like, thank you for calling because we didn't send this email. I mean, no one's immune to it. So I would call ahead to that business or the person, or like you said, get online and Google it and look for it, or just don't. Yeah. The calls, if someone calls you at home, just don't. Just say no thank you and hang up. Right. And then if you feel so inclined because the organization sounded like something that you wanted to do, call them, let them know, and go from there. So good tip, Katie. The second tip that is a good one is, and I do this a lot, is to actually dig in and read the GoFundMe description and updates. I have seen some. So with the GoFundMe, if you set up a crowd sharing, then it requires you to kind of give an overview, a description of what's going on with this person, what happened. And then it also requires them to give a description of what the money will be used for specifically. So it's a good idea to read that and see, and then take it a step further and go on and read if the site is doing any updates, if the person in charge of the fundraiser is doing any regular updates. Yeah. It's even a good idea to look for donor comments. So I might have stepped on another tip that's coming that you were going to share, but it just kind of goes together for me. So you got to just kind of keep an eye out for that, because that'll legitimize it a little bit, especially if it's in a local region and you start to see familiar names and they're giving and they're commenting. Right. It legitimizes it a little bit more, where the fraudulent ones will just offer nothing and have nothing. Yeah, no information, no updates. It's just... give your money to this. Yeah. And you can simple. Yeah. And you can even take the situation. Let's say someone was in a car accident and they're incurring a ton of medical bills, and the organizer is asking for some donations towards the medical bills. A lot of times when you Google something like that, you're going to see information and clues that it actually happened. And that the person running it is a close friend. I mean, if you look on Facebook, sometimes you'll see that connection. So that's just good ways to protect yourself there. Number 3. Consider donating to a charitable organization instead. GoFundMe is a well-known crowdfunding platform, but not the only way to financially assist somebody in need. Consider looking beyond crowdfunding platforms. Donating to organizations allow you to directly contribute to communities. Charitable organizations are not perfect. However, it's usually easier to verify where your money goes in those cases compared to GoFundMe campaigns launched by individuals.
Plus, some GoFundMe campaigns get far more than they need, leaving the creator to specify other ways they intend to use the money. That's okay in some cases, but donors often prefer knowing what happens with their funds with certainty before parting with them.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more right now, pretty quickly after this next and final GoFundMe tip about the fact that charity organizations aren't a shoo-in that they're legitimate. And we're going to share some horror stories there, but also some tips on how to make sure that they're actually legitimate. But it's definitely sometimes going that route is a little bit better than the GoFundMe because you literally can track and kind of see they're required more to actually disclose where the money's and funds
being used.
Yes. So
does GoFundMe have like a cap option?
They do.
Requesting? Because, I feel like I've seen that a lot where, we've gotten more than we needed. And it's on people that I know, and they were raising money for good reasons. And they'll say, so we're donating the rest to the charity, maybe linked to the illness that they were raising money for, or something like that.
And I mean, that is the key. It's usually for more of a personal thing. Something that's personally happening to them. So, donating to a charitable organization may not necessarily directly help them. But at the same time, if you find a charitable organization that has a more broad spectrum of services, indirectly it could help them because they could go request funding from them. So just something to think about. So speaking of those organizations, the charitable organizations that don't always turn out legitimate, in my research for this podcast, I recognized that, and it was, I think you alluded to in an earlier comment that we had, that there's a charity watch site. Of course, there's GoScamMe.com. Make sure you check that out. And it talks about some common GoFundMe scams that are out there. But there's also a charity watch site that basically their entire thing is to uncover scams and fraudulent charities. And they even have like a watch list of people, specific people. So if you see them associated with another organization, because a lot of these criminals are repeat offenders from one organization to another.
How do you even bounce around like that?
I know, in this day and age of information, it just baffles me. But we're going to share a few of these notorious individuals, and then we'll wrap it up with ways for you to make sure that you can avoid donating to something like this. The first one, and some of you may have heard of these individuals because some of their stories were definitely covered in the media at the time that they happened, but it's William Aramone. And he served 22 years as the president and CEO of United Way of America, which is very familiar to most of us, I think. It's the umbrella group for thousands of local United Way organizations. He served as the president and CEO for 22 years. And boy, does he have a colorful story. In 1992, Aramone resigned amidst allegations that he siphoned money from UWA through spin-off companies that he helped to create. Before the scandal broke, Aramone was widely respected as one of the most influential nonprofit leaders. In 1995, Aramone and two conspirators, Thomas Merlot and Stephen Polachak, were convicted of defrauding UWA. Aramone was convicted on 25 felony counts and sentenced to over 7 years in prison for fraudulently diverting $1.2 million of the charity's money to benefit himself and his friends. For instance, this is where it gets really juicy. He used UWA cash to woo a girl. Lori Villasor. She was 17 years old. No. He was 59. Ew. He met Villasor while dating her slightly older sister. Both young women were added to UWA's payroll. For his notoriously young girlfriend, Aramone spent $450,000 of the charity's money to purchase lavish furniture for a New York condo, $78,000 to chauffeur her around New York City, $4,800 to renovate her home in Florida. She must be truly dazzling. The couple vacationed to Egypt, London, Las Vegas, and Atlantic City, all on UWA's dime. The New York Times reported on the testimony of Aramone's former aide, Rena Duncan, with whom he also had an affair. Duncan testified to falsifying Aramone's expense records for 7 years so that he could charge the charity for things like champagne, flowers, and plane tickets. When Aramone resigned amid scandal in 1992, the organization's growth and contributions stalled for several years. I know I even to this day hear some people out there because I used to kind of be involved with our local one, which our local one is amazing and has zero issues. But I can remember there's still people who remember this story from the 90s being skeptical about not being able to see in transparency how the money's. Now it's totally different. I mean, they are disclosing. You can find their financials on their website. Each local organization is very different, but wow, amazing. And this, you think about it, this is a day and age really before the internet. People could really track and see and know
there's really no way to follow through.
Wow. Let's do another one.
All right. Let's talk about Larry Jones. Charity Watch members are certain to be familiar with Larry Jones, whose antics as president of Feed the Children earned the group a moniker of most outrageous charity in America from Charity Watch.
Oh boy.
Jones is also famous for appearing in FTC's Feed the Children television infomercials that featured malnourished children in impoverished areas around the world.
Oh,
during Jones's nearly 3 decades as president of the charity, FTC was plagued by financial impropriety and donated goods for themselves from FTC warehouse.
Oh boy.
The same year, the Daily Oklahoman reported that the FTC allegedly attempted to pressure the newspaper into not reporting on Jones's son Alan, who had filed for personal bankruptcy and revealed that he owned his father's charities. Owed his father's charity $950,000.
Yikes.
The paper's editor reported that Jones said he would give the newspaper a story twice as good if he didn't publish the story.
Oh my! I kind of want to hear that story. That's twice as good.
What's the better story?
Slow down.
Charity Watch sounded the alarm bell when it came out that FTC's former chief financial director confessed to forging the signature of an accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, on FTC's 1997, 1998, and 1999 financial statements.
Awful.
Jones also had history of making major decisions without board approval.
Oh, that's a no-no.
Including awarding a $40 million annual no-bid television buying agreement to Affiliated Media Group, a company employed by Jones's son, Alan.
Of course. This next line really gets me.
Despite the numerous scandals that took place under Jones's leadership, he remained
It's insane.
He remained at the charity for nearly 3 decades before FTC's board finally took action.
What? Like, hold on a second. Why? Why?
I'll just keep you around anyway.
You're all right. Maybe he was a funny guy.
Your ways. He's a funny guy. He just brings good energy to the room. We gotta keep him.
Let's keep him.
The final straw was Jones's 2009 admission that he had authorized the wiretapping of FTC's offices in order to secretly record his conversations with his employees.
This just went totally creepy.
FTC's board decided to put an end to his freewheeling dominance over the charity, demanding that Jones take a sabbatical.
Okay, he's not fired yet.
For an indefinite... Oh, no. I think it got cut off.
That's all right.
Indefinite period. I'll assume that's the end of the sentence. The charity responded with countersuit alleging that Jones took kickbacks from vendors, lied to FTC's board about giving himself and his wife unauthorized raises, misused charity funds, and a large stash of pornography hidden in his private area at his Christian charity.
This man. What?
In January 2011, Jones and FTC announced a resolution of the legal dispute. Jones is no longer associated with the charity he founded.
Wow.
Only as of its 2017 fiscal year has FTC started to improve upon its prior FND ratings from Charity Watch.
So just to remind you, that's the Feed the Children organization that's now on the Charity Watch list. Larry Jones. He is a doozy, but I just don't understand why he was allowed to stay there in leadership for so long. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with one more quick story, and I won't read the whole thing, but then we're going to go into some tips. So this is James Reynolds and 24 family members that are added to this watch list. So it was a family thing. It was a family event. The James Reynolds Sr. web of shameful charities began almost 30 years ago when he started Cancer Fund of America in 1987 after being forced out of his job, first red flag, at the Knoxville County, Tennessee chapter of the American Cancer Society. Okay. To raise funds for CFA, Reynolds used the services for profit professional fundraisers as well as a conveniently similar sounding name. So basically he's like, oh, you're going to kick me out of this place? I'll just make my own that sounds extremely similar. Yes. He had a conveniently similar sounding name, post office box and address, and timing of neighborhood door-to-door solicitation campaigns as the American Cancer Society. So he literally just went over across the street and duplicated the entire American Cancer Society situation. The fundraising strategy worked well for Reynolds as CFA's annual cash contributions eclipsed $10.5 million by just its fourth year of existence. But rather than spreading charitable good to cancer patients and their families, as donors were misled to believe CFA would do, he instead had spun a web of allegedly deceitful charity operations that have done little less but profited professionally and enriched Reynolds and his extended family with unmerited salaries and personal benefits, all according to a complaint filed in federal court of May of 2015. Charity Watch has been giving the Cancer Fund of America an F rating since 1993 for its extremely low program spending and high fundraising costs. Apparently, operating just as one disgraceful charity wasn't enough for Reynolds and some of his family. So between 2002 and 2011, 4 additional charities, each with cancer in the name, have been started and run by either Reynolds or a Reynolds family member who had previously worked at CFA. Following in his father's footsteps, James Reynolds Jr., who worked at CFA from the age of 16, started 2 charities, and he was founding member as well as president of the board of directors of a third, just like CFA. The 4 spinoff charities, Cancer Support Services, Children's Cancer Fund of America, the Breast Cancer Society, and American Association for Cancer Support. It's literally like just keep
They just
coming
like
up with
add
names.
support at the end of something that already exists.
They all have received F ratings on Charity Watch, basically because of the low program spending and giving back and high fundraising costs. So that equates to they're keeping the money.
Yeah.
A family connection among 5 charities that all have extremely low program spending, high fundraising costs is shameful in and of itself. It goes on to talk about all the federal complaints that have been filed against all of these different organizations. And it goes on to talk about the numerous family members that have worked at CFA and ended up having some type of spin-off cancer fundraising that had the same pattern, low program spending and high fundraising costs. James Reynolds Sr. and 24 additional family members were all a part of this litigation. Crazy.
Wow.
It's just insane. I think it said in the end, $75 million is what was in the claimed amount for this settlement. CFA and CSS are permanently dissolved, and Reynolds is permanently banned from managing, operating, fundraising, or otherwise for any nonprofit organization. I wonder if he did. I have to find out if he has ever actually done any kind of jail time for this, but it doesn't allude to it in there anyway. So you've heard the horrors of these charity organizations, and you've heard the horrors of GoFundMe. Let's talk a little bit about how you can protect yourself when you're donating to these charitable organizations. With, I think we have, 5 tips here? Yeah, we've got 5 tips. Fire away.
Well, it's always good to do some research. So while you're looking into charities, first step is to see if they have an employer identification number, an EIN. Legitimate charities all have an EIN. So you can Google what it is. You can say, what's their fake name? American Cancer Society EIN. You can Google that, and if nothing comes up, that's how you know.
It's basically if they're nonprofit status with the federal government, it's a tax ID number that shows that they have that status available to them. And that's one of the very first things, like Katie said, that you want to look for. And go on. Let's do another one. Give me another one.
Charities must register annually with the IRS and applicable state governments.
So that's one thing we kind of just said about with the EIN.
Yes, it'd be very similar.
So if they don't register or they're unwilling to, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
So you should be able to look at the IRS site or your individual state legislature and see if they have been registered for tax exempt status, which gives you a clue that they're legitimate if that's the case, because then they're required to provide the IRS and their state government with all the financial statements that show that they have been handling the funds correctly. Number 3.
Legitimate charities should have a way of donating to them that is not exclusively by cash, gift card, or wire transfer.
Yeah, I've seen more and more of these. That is like a big old red flag. I mean, I've had a call before and I've just kind of teased with them, like the home spam that you get. And I've been like, okay, tell me where I can mail a check. Well, we don't accept checks. Well, then you don't get my money.
Well, yeah, that's like number one way to donate. I think.
And that's for them. It's that sense of urgency that you realize let's just do this right now. And, we can. So definitely beware of those ones that don't give you multiple ways that you can donate. If it's a legitimate charity, they're going to take your money however they can. And if you want to write a check.
And they're not going to tell you how.
Right.
They're going to
say, how would you like? Yes, exactly. Good point.
Let's see. Charities be able to provide tax receipts for donations.
Yes. Definitely if they are a nonprofit registered with the IRS. They may not always ask. Sometimes you'll go somewhere and they may forget to say, would you like a tax receipt for, for your taxes. But if you ask for it, they should be able to do that. And if they don't, then that's a little bit of a red flag.
That's even like when I take stuff to thrift stores.
Like donating clothes.
When you just drop that off. And I wouldn't have thought about that with clothes, but they always say, hey, do you need a tax receipt for this?
That's correct. And then the 5th and final tip for charity organizations.
Legitimate charities should tell you what donations will be used for.
Yes. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, United Way is one that comes to mind. Like they literally show some of their financial statements that you can see, this for every $1 that you donate, 70 cents is going to this, maybe 30 cents of it is going to administration and costs for just their overhead. You can look for that transparency of seeing how much of my donation actually goes there. And the best ones are the ones that say, listen, almost every $1 but 1 cent, that sort of thing. If they have that responsibility to keep their overhead costs as low as they possibly can. So if you look and you see it's a higher percentage going to administration, that equates to salary. Yeah. That basically equates to, there's other stuff in there too. There's leasing a building. And if they have a building where they provide the services, there's overhead costs like that associated. But it's broken down. If you see that line item for administrative costs is higher, that's probably not a great idea. Not a good idea. So beware of organizations that try to rush you to make your donation. We talked about that sense of urgency. They don't want you thinking about it for too long. This especially happens with some of our senior members who, they get flustered and hurried and they feel very pressured. You don't want to do anything with somebody if they're going to make you feel rushed to do it. Yeah. And be like we just mentioned, if they use most of their money as overhead, keep an eye out for that. If it sounds very similar to another charity's name, like we just saw with the cancer, using that over and over again, be careful with that. Do your research online. And also, this is a big one. Be careful of those charities that are formed shortly after a recent disaster. We saw a lot of charities pop up during the pandemic. A lot of them were scams. So people inevitably will take advantage of a situation like that, and people want to do what they can to help. If the hurricane that just occurred in Florida, so people want to. We were one of them too, who were looking for ways that we could help because Illinois wasn't impacted by it, but we knew that there were credit unions down there who were impacted by it. So we kind of decided to look for legitimate types of sources. There's so many out there though that are just scams because they know that people are going to want to give, and I can capitalize on this and take your money and run. So. And then let's wrap it up with those 3 easy ways to keep yourself from being a victim.
Sure. So first would be to check a database such as the IRS website, BBB, so Better
Business Bureau.
Yep. So Better Business Bureau, Wise Giving Alliance, or Charity Navigator, or other reputable sources to get more information on a charity.
Yep. Number 2, pay by check or with a credit card whenever possible. It just gives you a better ability to track that and see what's actually happening with it. And then 3,
this especially if you're doing this online, make sure you didn't sign up for a reoccurring payment if you didn't want to do one.
Oh, that's an easy thing to catch you.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an auto check thing, I wouldn't think, but always make sure it's not checked before you finalize.
Yeah, there's several of them like that. Like, I think United Way is one, Salvation Army sometimes is one. Some of those larger organizations that have small local affiliate chapters, if you're doing it online, usually it will give you the option to have a repeat, or if you do one through work, we have one like that. Just keep an eye that you don't do something that's repeated, because a lot of those organizations, when you're signing up or paying online, will default to a repeated gift.
Yeah.
So you have to uncheck it and say it's a one-time donation. So just keep an eye out for that in the paperwork if you're doing it, or if it's online. So watch for that. All right. So we hope we didn't, give you total and complete displeasure in humanity with some of these stories today. There's so much good out there. We just wanted to provide you with some things to look for, some red flags to catch when you're doing some donations like this, especially as we come into the holiday season where you're solicited a little bit more, and people are doing different fundraisers and just to do the legwork to make sure what you're doing and what you're helping with is legitimate. So we want you to stay safe. Yeah. As always, we're here if you have any questions or you need any help, or if we can help assist you in any way with how to make those better donations. We are here. You can call us at any time, or of course do your research online, but we're happy to help in any way, shape, or form. Make sure you drop in with us on our next episode 3, Mind Over Money, the psychology of moolah. We're going to talk a little bit about how your psychological makeup can impact how you manage money. There's a legit connection.
Things.
Yep.
All right.
So make sure you keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, we really appreciate you being here with us from Land of Lincoln Credit Union. We want you to bank on learning more.